What a pass. Giddy underneath for JRE. The reverse and the rookie-to-rookie action outside the door. He'll get the flyby. 3 on the way, and he rattles it in. SGA defended closely by Westbrook. Tough. Step back. Gets up the shot. Bakes it in for the lead.
This is Udart. You're listening to the Uncontested.
What is up, and welcome to the Uncontested podcast, coming to you live Sunday, January 9th, on the heels of the Thunder losing to the Denver Nuggets. We are proudly part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network, the official podcast of SI Thunder. I'm your host for the evening, Jacob Niffen. I've got Taylor Peterson with me tonight.
Fresh new intro. Shout out Silva.
Yeah, JD made the new intro. Couldn't even be on the show. We've also got Nick Crane here.
We're a week out from NFL playoffs. I'm very, very nervous.
Kamiar and I's two teams matching up in the first round.
Yeah, that won't
Big
be a
Ben,
game.
Patrick Mahomes.
Ain't going to be a game.
I mean, you would hope so, but with this Chiefs team, you know, there's no telling. They might just put me out of my misery first round, and I can just focus on Thunder. It's been a season.
Who do the Cowboys have, Nick?
The 49ers, who are not
I haven't been paying attention to
record-wise, but they've won like 8 of their last 10. You don't want that kind of team that's like hot right now. So
they won tonight, Nick? 49ers
they beat the Rams in overtime.
Who do my Arizona Cardinals have?
They play the Rams.
Oh, okay. I have not watched any NFL football this whole season. So
Rams, Cardinals will be a lot of fun. I'm looking at this game. Raiders, Chargers right now.
Yeah.
Also really, really important one to keep. The NFL playoff race has just been absolutely absurd, Jacob. Like, it's been crazy. Nick can testify.
Yeah. The game going on right now, if both teams were to kneel it out, they would both make the playoffs. But if they don't, only one makes it.
That's true.
If they tie, both make it. But if someone wins, the other doesn't get in.
I can't say that.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
There has to be some sort of back hallway handshake to tie that bitch, right?
Yeah, it's 17-14 right now, heading right out of halftime. So
there's. That's interesting. I love that.
I mentioned Pittsburgh. I mentioned the Steelers. Kamiar's team playing my team. Yeah. So if the Raiders and Chargers were to tie, to Nick's point, the Chiefs would not be playing.
Yeah.
The Steelers. I think they'd be playing whoever, and I'm not sure how maybe that's a coin flip at this point.
Yeah.
Whoever ends up with the better,
I think it'd be Chargers
point differential or whatever. Yeah, tiebreaker in terms of wins against the Chargers and Raiders. But
does anybody play tomorrow night?
Not an NFL game.
Okay, that's what it
last game of the regular season.
Interesting.
This is it.
There's nothing quite like the
national championship game, college football game tomorrow night.
There's nothing quite like the last day of games before the playoffs and the seeding, especially the NBA. Exactly. You just gotta love it.
Well, there's always like the team that busts everything up. The Colts were a shoo-in. All they did was beat the crappy Jaguars, who've won 2 games all year, and the Jags kicked the crap out of them.
Yes,
and the Colts missed the playoffs now.
Yes.
Oh wow, that sucks.
And the Jags don't get the first pick.
Yeah,
like they should have.
Welcome to the Uncontested, the NFL podcast. All right, guys, let's jump into tonight's game. We got a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about this Thunder loss to the Nuggets. We're going to talk about some tank stuff. We got a lot of listener questions. And I don't know if you guys know this, but when this episode goes live early Monday morning, officially 1 month away from the NBA trade deadline.
Ooh.
So we'll talk some league-wide trade stuff as well. But first, the Thunder played a game tonight against the Denver Nuggets. Last time the Nuggets were in town, they were awful. And their head coach benched all of their starters for most of the second half and let his bench almost bring them back into the game. Jokic never saw the floor in the fourth quarter. Tonight, you had to assume they'd be a little more motivated, and they did. They won 99-95. But the first quarter, I think, really showed how motivated they were. The first quarter, my notes here said, was butt ugly, 36-23, and it didn't necessarily feel that close in that first quarter, Nick.
No, and that was a statement, like you mentioned. I don't think, if my memory serves me correctly, I don't think the Denver starters played at all in the fourth quarter of that.
That's correct.
That last game in Oklahoma City. So this was definitely a game. Come out, prove yourself. Don't be slouchy. Don't come out with no energy. I mean, a lot of teams, you play the Thunder, like, you don't feel like you have to come out and play, and that didn't work out for them last time. Did work out for them this time. I mean, honestly, with how close the game ended up being, if they didn't have that huge surge at the beginning, they probably lose again.
100%. Yeah, and Denver shoots 6 of 10 from 3 in that first quarter. I think the Nuggets outscored the Thunder by 18 on 3-pointers alone in the first half, which was really the difference in the game.
Rivers.
Nick, Jacob, what game was it last week? I'm going blank. I think it was 2 games ago where the Thunder got off to a really, really rough it's against the Timberwolves. They got off to a terrible first quarter. And if they wouldn't have had that first quarter,
starting to become a little bit of a theme. Something to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
The second quarter, though, the bench comes in. Thunder bench comes in. I thought Taylor just completely changed the energy of the game.
Absolutely. I agree completely. Something to mention, Jacob, the only quote unquote backup point guard. I mean, obviously we all collectively consider Giddey and Shea to be ball handlers, right? And occasional de facto point guards. There's not necessarily a set point guard on this team, but in the second unit, the backup guard who came in to facilitate the second unit was Trey Mann. And I really, really loved that adjustment by Mark Daigneault. No Ty Jerome tonight, as much as I do like Ty. No Teo Maladone tonight. It was Trey who led that second unit. Now, in the first half, it wasn't so much Trey as it was some of these other players. Baisley did have continues to look much better, a little more comfortable, being kind of the backup, quote unquote, center with that second unit as Favors started tonight with the starters. Poku had a solid game overall, but obviously Wiggins continues to really play well. I thought Kenrich Williams just continues to do what he does best. And that second unit arguably was the best unit, the best lineup for this team, not only in the first half, but the second half as well, which I know we'll get into.
I've got a plug. And I'm just relaying the information here. Post game, Trey Mann was asked about, his performance and the bench playing well. And he gave Kenrich all the credit being a leader on the bench, saying before they went in and made that run, he was like motivating everybody, saying, we've got to be the spark. We got to turn this thing around. And everyone responded well to him, looking up to him, and they came in and did it. All that to say, if there's any general managers of contenders out there listening to this pod, you might want to trade for Kenrich Williams.
I would love if that was happening.
That's an interesting quote, though.
Yeah. Not to derail us already 8 minutes into the pod, although you guys had 5 minutes of NFL talk. I mean, there's a reason they constantly talk about how Kenrich is so respected in that locker room, and trading him would help the tank and help them lose games. But I also wonder the residual effects of what that has on the locker room. Maybe it creates a vacuum where somebody else has to step up and take that leadership role, which would be awesome.
Right.
But it's just interesting. So my notes then I have for the third quarter, the defense clamped down in the third. And then my only other note for the third quarter is Lou Dort. I thought the defense in that third quarter the first quarter, they gave up open shots everywhere. The third quarter, nearly everything was contested. I think with 3 minutes left to go in the game, Denver had only hit 3 second-half threes. Thunder rotating, contesting everything, digging down in the post, showing doubles to Jokic and trying to play zone on the backside to confuse him and pick off passes. I thought the defense was phenomenal in that third quarter. And then for the fourth, the bench continued their great play. We finally started to get some energy. That first quarter felt just like such a drag. And that fourth quarter comes around, crowd starts coming to life. The fourth quarter was when we got the Trey Mann ripping the ball out of Jokic's hands and throwing the no look behind the back lefty dime to a cutting Aaron Wiggins for a dunk. Place comes alive, but, and as my notes say verbatim, shit the bed at the end. They did everything, and then the end came around and they lost the game.
Perfect tank game.
Nearly a perfect tank game. You could.
No, I think Nick tweeted out during that play. Nick, you said was your favorite. Did you say rookie to rookie play of the season? I don't think I could. Don't think I could disagree there. That was pretty exciting. Like I said, Trey maybe. I thought he was. Like I said, I love that move from Daigneault to have Trey facilitate the second unit. But it was really the second half where we saw the benefits of that, and where Trey really stepped up in that second unit and played well. Continue to be really impressed with him. I loved the lineup tonight from Daigneault. And to your point, Jacob, the second unit was great. I even had, I apologize, I can't remember who it was that tweeted at me, but said that, if Daigneault keeps that second unit in towards the end of the game, maybe the Thunder still pull off that win.
Yeah.
Right? Because the Spurs did struggle some tonight. Obviously Nuggets throwing in their stars as well, but needless to say that, the bench unit was fantastic. I don't have stats pulled up right now, but I'm sure those lineups had pretty special plus minuses.
I think Shea, we know that the team lives and dies by Shea. And when he struggles, I think the starting unit struggles a lot. And I think games like tonight, when he's really, really poor offensively and extremely inefficient, you might be almost better off with the bench unit than there. I think we saw that.
Yeah, for sure.
That is a good point.
Yeah, one of the first things I wanted to talk about here was Shea's struggles. Tonight, he was a team worst, -15. We say this all the time, that single game plus minuses are very noisy. There's not a lot
to
extrapolate
stats, not
there.
Player stats, but still.
But -15 still feels pretty significant in a 4-point loss. He had 8 points on 2 of 14 field goals, 0 of 3 from 3. Nick, tell me if you saw something different. I felt like Shea was very, very frustrated tonight, and that frustration from missing easy shots early bled over into missing easy shots late, and just really couldn't get anything going.
Yeah, it's like if you've ever played basketball, you've had this feeling where you can't get a shot going, and you try forcing a little bit, try to get into a rhythm. A lot of times that works. You hit a shot, you're right back into it. But if you can't, it just frustrates even more. I think he's got the mental that it won't affect him long term, like game to game. I don't think it really affects him. I don't even think play to play it affects him too much. Although tonight, I think you did see that, Jacob. He was trying to get things going, and it just would not go. Just wasn't his night, and that happens to everybody. Steph Curry at that game I was at last weekend against Dallas, like he was horrible. Couldn't get a shot going. It happens to the best in the league, and it's nothing to be concerned about. But, on a game-to-game basis, like the Thunder aren't going to win many games when Shea shoots like that.
Definitely. Taylor, one thing that Coach Daigneault mentioned Saturday at practice, was the way Shea plays whenever Giddey has the ball in his hand. And I don't have the direct quote in front of me, but basically said Shea needs to be more involved, more engaged, more active, moving off the ball. I thought that was a really interesting quote because we've talked about that a lot on this podcast.
That's what I was going to mention. Yeah.
And so did you see anything tonight with Shea and Giddey and that tandem that would lead you to believe that they're starting to build that?
I will say that there is some things even tonight that I see that is encouraging in terms of Shea and Giddey, but not so much Shea playing off ball. What I saw tonight was Shea and Giddey looking for each other, and not just tonight. Over the past handful of games since Shea, has come back from his minor injury that he had there, is Shea and Giddey playing better together, I should say, looking for each other. For example, I think of a play, I want to say it was the second quarter, where Shea drives down to the left block, finds a cutting Giddey to perfection. It was a gorgeous pass, and Shitty. A great nickname, but Giddey has a great pass as well to JRE down low, although I felt, it got tipped away, and I felt like Giddey should have gone to the basket. There's encouraging signs like that I'm starting to see with them playing together, but to your question, Shea's not playing very well off ball, mainly because there's not a lot of reason to on this team, even if your coach is telling you to. And it's not really in his game. That's a little concerning to me. Also, just kind of back on the question you asked Nick, like I do continue to be, I think Nick brings up a really good point. It doesn't affect Shea game to game, which is really important. We haven't seen that at all, but we do see it some play to play. We saw the frustration carry into the second half when he's not able to finish around the rim. You continue to see that frustration build, and that is something I would like to see, especially from Shea being the leader on this team, being a really special player that I want to see take it to the next level. I'd like to see him funnel that frustration, come into the second half, and be able to, kind of explode in the second half from an offense standpoint.
I think that's totally fair. I want to see Shea shoot more catch and shoots off Giddey drives.
Yes.
And I just want to see Shea cut whenever Giddey drives more. I think there'd be a lot of opportunities there.
What do you think tonight, Jacob, of his play off ball? I'm curious what you think as well.
Shea, I felt like there was still a lot of standing around.
Nick,
I felt like other guys cut off Shea drives. I would just like to see Shea do more when the ball is not in his hand, besides stand in one place or float to 10 feet beyond the 3-point line and wait for a pass so he can reset and ISO once more.
Agreed.
I want to see them do more Denver Nuggets type stuff where one guy has the ball and other guys are moving off of that and getting easy buckets, right? I think that's one thing this team sometimes lacks is getting easy buckets. Speaking of Shea, and recently, when you look at his last 11 games, which would take you back 3 full weeks, he's averaging 23 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, but shooting 40% from the floor, 17% from 3. 0.9 makes on 5.2 attempts a game.
Because that's
him and Giddey kind of whoop.
Yeah, right. But like I see
we'll
that
get to the Giddey number in a second, but yes, very much so.
I see Shea's stat line. You hear points, assists, rebounds. You think, man, that's solid. And then you see his efficiency, and you just realize how much better I think Shea can and will be once this team is contending again and builds a true contender around him.
For sure. I thought his defense was pretty okay tonight. I thought he got into guys a little bit, had a few steals, had a few
better
blocks.
In the second half with the team, which I don't think is coincidence. Yes. I do think Shea does lead that to Nick's point earlier, does lead that starting unit on that side of the ball as well. But I think there's not a coincidence that when they're coming out of halftime and they don't probably chewed into him a little bit as he should.
Definitely. Nick, we continue to see growth from Josh Giddey. What are you seeing both tonight and just recently that really jumps off the page for you with this kid?
Yeah, the 3-point shooting is obvious. Like, he was abysmal early on, and it's starting to click. And he said post-game he thinks that's mental. Schlecht asked him, is that a shot selection? Is that a time in the gym? Like, what is it? He said in the NBL, he admitted he was like, when I missed a shot, like, it would really get in my head. It was hard for me to go play to play and get into a rhythm. But he said now he has, like, the Thunder's franchise motto is that 0-0, game to game, play to play. You erase what's behind you and you just go forward. And Giddey's like adopted that. And he thinks that mentally he's a better shooter because he doesn't get up in his own head. Kind of like we talked about with Shea a second ago. Like, he just doesn't get in his own head. So that stuck out. Just the rebounding has been absurd, absurd. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I would guess he's probably, if not the best rebounder on the season, the best rebounder over the past couple weeks, month,
Yeah, so let me give you some Giddey stats real quick.
Okay.
Over the past 11 games, same time frame that we looked at Shea with, for that's basically the past 3 weeks. Giddey is averaging 7.4 assists, 8.3 rebounds. That leads the team, and it's not really that close. Shooting 37% from 3 on 4.4 attempts a game.
Wow,
his splits over the past 3 weeks are 12.8 points, 8.3 rebounds, 7.4 assists.
8.3 rebounds.
Do you have how many shot attempts?
Total?
I'm going to guess it's between,
like, you want totals, not averages?
And 13.
Over the last 11, how many shots has he taken each game?
Per game, yeah.
Total shots?
Sure.
11.9 field goal attempts, 4.4 3-point attempts.
I was really close.
So 11 shots a game.
Basically 12. 11.9.
Okay.
But still.
So my question to you guys would be, like, when we look at like rookie of the year, the guys that are high volume typically get the nod. Guys that make all NBA teams, like you look at Wagner in Orlando, like he's having these 30-point nights, but he's like shooting a ton. So that's not my question is like, how do you compare him to those kind of guys? But in terms of his development, the type of player you want him to be, do you want him shooting more now? Is it concerning that he's not shooting more, or are you cool with him, chilling around that 10, 12 shots a game?
I think that's just his nature.
Yeah.
Right. I think not only is he an incredibly high IQ player and an incredible passer, but I think it is his nature to like only shoot when the shot's there and not force and not ISO.
And what does the team need from me tonight? Do I need to go and get double? I'm not saying he goes out and says tonight I need to get double digit assists and double.
I think he kind of sees the flow of the game though and realizes
exactly.
Well, I got to hit the glass.
Right.
I got to set guys up. Whatever. I mean, yeah, it'd be fun to see him shoot more, especially with the efficiency higher. I think I mentioned it tonight on Twitter. The jumper, like physically looks better. There's not the weird leg kick thing. There's not like the weird hitch and lock it and then shoot it. It's more fluid. The legs are staying in place. He's more upright when he shoots it. Like the form looks a lot better, and that kind of coincides with the ball going in the hoop more.
He spends a lot of time with Mike Wilkes in the gym shooting, so I'm hoping that's what we're seeing.
I agree. I think it is. I mentioned that today. I tweeted it out during the game, like 3 of 5 from 3 tonight, which is fantastic, and that kind of lines up with what we've seen over the past couple of games. Jacob, you mentioned his fluidity. I think the shot is much more fluid. Like you said, I noticed the balance. I noticed he's dropping his hips. He's bending his knees more in the shot.
He's not leaning into it.
And his release is so much higher and better. I agree completely. He's more confident in it. He's taking it without hesitation. We see some catch and shoot. I kind of hope we see more of that from Shea as well, because we haven't.
If he ends the season, or sorry, not ends the season, but like for his career going into like next season, the season after, and shoots what he's shooting over the past 11, which is 37% on 4.5 attempts a game.
That's a really good player.
If he does that, a freaking steal at pick number 6.
Yeah.
With the passing, the size, the rebounding. He's not a bad defender. Like I think, I mean, shit, as far as rookies are concerned, I might put him in like the above average category on defense. I mean, he's no Evan Mobley, but he's
size.
The size is impressive. If he can shoot 37% from 3 on like modest attempts a game to where the defenses have to respect him, you've got something really, really special there. So I think what we continue to see continues just to be very encouraging. Nick Baisley seems to be finding a bit of a role off the bench here. I come to these podcasts and I have less and less negative things to say. I mean, like he had a play today where he was feeling himself and put the ball on the floor, try to drive past Jokic and dribbled it off his foot out of bounds. And I mean, that's just Baisley stuff.
Yep.
But some of the stuff he's been doing off the bench, you've been on this for a year and a half now. Whenever this team gets good, he is a bench piece at best. He's kind of finding his role there.
Yeah, no, he is. I think the eye test passes. He's an energy guy off the bench, exceptional shot blocker. That's what stuck out the most. That's no surprise. I'd like to present you a negative case for Baisley here.
I'm not going to dissuade you from that.
The efficiency hasn't gotten better. I think the first couple games off the bench, he was like really shooting better. So if you look at hhis last 7 games, so that's the last 7 games he's played, he was like in health and safety protocols for a little bit. So the last 7 games he played where he hadn't started, I'm just doing kind of rough math here. 10.6 rebounds, 2 blocks. Again, the blocks stick out.
Blocks
so
that's fantastic.
That sounds great.
The defense might be keeping him in a rotation, right?
Yeah.
Point, Nick.
Certainly. And that's in 23 minutes. Like if you told me you got a guy that's 6'9", long, versatile, 10 points, 6 rebounds, 2 blocks a game in 24 minutes, 23 minutes, sign me up. Like that's solid, right? Then you look at his shooting, 3-point shooting, rough math, top of my head here. I think he's roughly 4 of 20 from deep. over the past 7 games, which is like 20-something%, like low 20s from 3. Not
4
good.
of 20 is just 20% even.
Yeah. So not good at all. From the floor, a little bit better. Like today, he was 5 for 9. Like that's really, really good. But coming into today, he was 40% from the floor. The 6 games before tonight, so increased a little bit. Like 40% from the floor is not horrible, but it's still not efficient. Like that's the thing with Bays that we've always talked about. Like the two things are, he's got Baisley plays where he turns it over to something stupid and he's just flat out not efficient. And the efficiency, we've not seen a huge uptick with his bench roll. Although the eye test says he looks better. So Jacob, I'll pass that back to you and I'll take your takeaways on Baisley over the past 7.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's ever going to be efficient. Looking at his totals, field goal percent, 3-point percent, free throw percent, effective field goal percent, all this season the lowest of his career. Just not good. But defensively off the bench, I think he's been a real spark plug. This season, in 873 total minutes, Baisley has 41 blocks. Last season, in 1,700 minutes, can you guys guess how many blocks he had?
25.
You saw that stat earlier today.
No, he
that was way too fast.
He broke his season record tonight. He had 41 his rookie year.
Yes, 41 his rookie year in 1,100 minutes.
Yeah,
25 last year in 1,700 minutes. And 870 minutes this season. He already has 41 blocks.
Wow. 44 now. 44.
Wow.
Okay, yeah, before tonight's stats.
Yep.
His steals are already at the totals at career highs. He's already at the same amount of assists that he had his rookie year. So those things are good, but the scoring is just so bad.
That's so weird.
I will tell you one thing that was encouraging tonight. I didn't like the 0 of 3 from 3. He did take catch and shoot threes, which were okay.
That's okay.
But there were a couple of plays where they played him at center off the bench,
right,
where he would run, he'd be the screener in the pick and roll, and he would dive to the basket and catch and get fouled. There was one where he caught and tried to short roll and pass it out to the corner, and it got stolen. But you can see the wheels kind of starting to turn on that pick and roll stuff. And if he can be a defensive matchup kind of guy off the bench who can score not by going off the dribble, but by catching on the pick and roll and finishing at the basket, or catching on the pick and roll and kicking out to the other side and reversing the ball, he can find himself a nice little role on this team and in the NBA.
I like that. I think that's fair. The only other thing I was going to say about Baisley, Jacob, as you mentioned, his defensive instincts. I just find that so interesting because when you, this sounds harsh, but when you talk about low IQ basketball players, typically that translates.
Say that again when you talk about
what did you just say?
Low IQ basketball players.
I thought you said little white kids. I was like,
that's what I thought he said too. When you think about little white kid basketball players,
we think of.
It's like, what?
Baisley is neither of those.
I was trying to like nod along, like, yeah, when you talk about those guys. So what?
What is he talking about? That's really weird.
Goodness.
I guess like cut out, or I don't know.
Okay.
When you talk about low IQ
thank you,
basketball players, typically it's on both ends of the floor. And it's interesting to me that Baisley has really good, or seems to have good defensive instincts, but struggles on the offensive end.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating.
Right.
Hey, that block tonight at the rim,
huge.
That was impressive.
I thought it was Kenrich at first, and then I realized, oh, wait, that was Baisley.
And then Poku splashes the 3 at the other end. That was the second most exciting sequence of the night.
Hey, Jacob, if you have the stats pulled up, I don't know if the extent of what you have. So since Baisley, or I guess over the last 11 games you had pulled up, do you still have that?
Mm-hmm.
Where does Baisley rank in minutes per game? I know it's kind of a mix of him being a starter versus not. And actually with health and safety, it may be mostly off the bench, but where does he rank in minutes per game?
Last 11, he is 6th at 22.1, 4 minutes behind Jeremiah Robinson Earl, who's at 26, and 2 minutes ahead of Kenrich Williams.
Okay.
After Kenrich, you have Paul Watson, Teo Maladone, and Ty Jerome. That would be the health and safety protocols coming through for you right there.
Yeah. So, and tonight it was Baisley had 24 minutes, was 5th on the team, which is right behind JRE. Kenrich was right behind him with like 18. So I think that's kind of on par. I think that's probably was like the sales pitch to Baisley coming off the bench. It's like, hey, it's not a demotion. You're still going to play, starter type minutes. I think it gives him more flexibility too. If you're coming off the bench, you can play backup center. You can play backup small forward. But when you're starting power forward, you're kind of stuck there. I think it gives him more options. I think they're exploring that too.
Yeah, I think they're definitely exploring his defensive versatility too. I mean, you look at tonight, he guarded Austin Rivers and he guarded Nikola Jokic.
Two very different players.
You don't get, much more polar opposites than that. Last note I have from this game, unless you guys have anything else, it just says Trey Mann just does shit, man. Because that's what he does. He just does shit. Trey Mann tonight, 7 points on 3 of 7 shooting, only 1 of 4 from 3. Had a rebound, 5 assists, and 2 steals. The floater game is beautiful. I've really enjoyed watching Trey on the ball more recently. The 3 came in the first quarter, right before the quarter ended. They got a steal, and he almost threw one in from Norman. I mean, that one was deep. There's something like this kid, Nick, I think you said it tonight. He's just a bucket. He can just score from any level of the floor. He's so much fun to watch. There's something there. And again, a deceptive 6'5".
Yeah.
Very.
I'm very fascinated in what he looks like on a contender one day. There's a lot of guys
thinking that too.
Score a bunch on these kind of teams. We're the people that 4 years ago, if you listen to our pod, we're talking about empty stats and like, oh, someone's got to score. It's true, although his scoring is like pop off the page. Like if you watch the Thunder for the first time this year, and it's a game that Trey Mann's playing in, you're going to be like, who's this guy?
Guy can do stuff.
He pops. But on a contender, like on the flip side, if this Thunder team was pushing for a playoff spot, and he's doing some of these like 30-footers and like, trying to street by, you'd be like, whoa, what are you doing? Maybe, so like, I'd just be curious to see what it looks like on a team that's actually contending, where it's a little more on a leash.
Nick, to your point, yes, I think that's fair. For example, Poku last season, Nick, had a very, very, very long leash last year in the second half of the season after he got back from the G League bubble, compared to this season where he's very, very short leash honed in. We probably are going to see some of that from the coaching staff in regards to Trey next season. But to your point, I think what we are seeing from Trey is that that's going to translate. And the reason we can say that is because it doesn't matter what the competition is, whether they're playing. Maybe the Timberwolves are a bad example since they have been a little better this season. Well, let's go ahead and use the Timberwolves as an example. The past couple of games that the Thunder played versus a really good Denver Nuggets team, even without, the players at Jamal Murray they have injured. He's doing the same things regardless of the competition. And what I really loved, I mentioned this earlier when we were talking about this game, is just Daigneault playing him with that backup point guard. I'm fascinated by that. I really am. I'm not saying that's not going to be his position long term. Probably, he'll probably do a little bit of both, right? They probably envision him next to another ball handler in the second unit with a contender. But I love seeing that. I love that adjustment from Daigneault tonight.
Whenever Trey stole the ball out of the hands of Nikola Jokic tonight and led the break with that behind the back pass, Royce Young, now I'm officially part of the Oklahoma City Thunder, which is kind of interesting. It's a weird phrase to say.
Yeah.
After he was with ESPN for so long. Mark Daigneault absolutely loved that play from Trey Mann, and that was before he whipped a behind the back pass. As soon as Mann ripped the ball away from Jokic, Daigneault cracked a huge smile and pumped his fist.
Mark said that post game. Mark was
Broccoli.
He was asked point blank, like, what did you think about that sequence, the behind the back, the dunk? And Mark said, my favorite part of that play was ripping the ball from Jokic.
Oh,
yes. Broccoli, and you can have the Skittles for dessert, baby.
Point guard minutes. I love it. I love it.
You guys have anything? We've gone for 35 minutes about this game. You guys have anything else you want to talk about this one before we move on?
Youth.
On to the next one.
On to the next one. They have the Washington Wizards on Tuesday night.
Interesting one.
Wizards beat the Magic tonight in the best matchup of the NBA, Wizards versus Magic. Which came first, a Wizard or the Magic? I don't know. It's a chicken or an egg discussion. That game should always be played at Universal Studios inside Hogwarts, but the NBA doesn't hire me to make these decisions. Let's move on and talk about the tank a little bit, guys. It's obviously this is what the Thunder is building towards. So this week,
do you have the tank sounder?
Somewhere.
Okay, never mind.
Let's find it.
We don't have our producer, Taylor. You're throwing him on the spot, man.
Well, I know, but Jacob has all the sounders. The keeper of the sounders.
Loser! You're a loser! And that means that the number 1 pick in the NBA draft goes to...
I appreciate you doing that for me.
I also have this sounder.
Alexej Pokasevetsky.
Just in case you wanted to hear that.
It's funny because he's better than Taylor at pronouncing it.
All right.
Can you imagine if the Utah Jazz
boys.
kid was on this team and I'm like,
This week, the Los Angeles Clippers went 1-3. The one win came today against the Atlanta Hawks, who are struggling. We'll probably talk about them here in just a little bit. But the Clippers go 1-3. They currently sit in 13th place, officially in the lottery, in the reverse standings. They're only a half game behind the Washington Wizards and the Minnesota Timberwolves, although they're only a half game behind the Boston Celtics and the New York Knicks. Another loss could get them as low as 11th in the reverse standings. So, Nick, let's play a little game here. I forget which nursery rhyme it is. Is it Goldilocks, where you have the 3 bears, too big, too little, and just right?
well,
Nick is giving me a crazy look.
Too cold, just right.
Yeah,
porridge.
my porridge was too hot. My porridge was too cold. My porridge was just right. Nick
I was raised under a rock, I guess.
Would agree. End of the season, Nick.
Okay.
13th spot for the Clippers. Is that too high, too low, or just right?
Is the question where I think it'll end up, or what okay.
Where you think it will end up, not what you want it to end up.
We know where you want it
no.
to end up.
No, I think I was more asking where I think it'll end up versus like best case scenario kind of a thing.
Okay. No, where do you think it will end up?
Okay.
Is 13th too high, too low, or just right?
I think it's just right because Paul George and Kawhi, for all we know, could both be playing late in the season. In which case I think they would rise up the standings. And from what we've seen so far, things are going to be so damn close that if the Clippers go on a 5-game win streak at the end of the regular season, they're going to go from like 11th in the lottery to 15th, like in a snap. That's how close things are going to be.
Definitely. Paul George, the injury was announced on Christmas Day, would be reevaluated in 3 to 4 weeks. Today starts week number, that was week 1, week 2. This starts week number 3. So the earliest for a reevaluation would be 6 days from now. The timetable gives it 6 to 15 days from now, and that is to get reevaluated. We'll see what happens after that point. Also, the news over the weekend that Kawhi Leonard is ahead of schedule. It's going to be interesting because if they slip even more, is there a push from the Clippers? Hey, let's not rush guys that have injury histories back. Let's let them rest up and re-gear for next season. Is there a let's make a push now because we don't know what's going to happen? It's going to be pretty interesting, but that Clippers pick is in the best spot it's been all season. I think Thunder fans are pretty happy with it as it currently stands. Taylor, do you think that Clippers pick at the end of the season is 13 too high, too low, or just right?
I agree with Nick. I think it's just right, mainly because realistically, if it was any better, that's just like really, really good lottery luck. So I think 13 is just right. I don't see them rushing those kind of players back, but it's also LA and Steve Ballmer, who don't really care, nor do they have to. I mean, this is kind of a discussion we've had ever since the Thunder trade away Paul George and Russell Westbrook. A team like the Clippers don't have to go through a rebuild, right? And they have tons of money. It doesn't matter if they rush those players back. They can do a restart whenever they need to. They're a big market and they can attract big stars. So with all that being said, I think this is probably just right.
I think I would agree with you guys. OKC this week went 0-3. They currently sit at 4th in the reverse standings. They are only a half game better lottery odds than the New Orleans Pelicans, who lost tonight. Pelicans are at 14-26. Thunder are at 13-26.
Close.
And the Thunder are only 1.5 games up in the reverse standings on Portland and Indiana, which I don't think were two teams that we thought at the start of the new year the Thunder would be competing against in the tank standings. But here we are. They are also 3 games ahead of Houston, 4.5 games ahead of Detroit, and a full 7 ahead of Orlando. Nick, same question. End of the season, is 4th for OKC too high, too low, or just right?
I think it's, again, just right to where they landed last year after the coin flip with the Cavaliers. They ended up with the 4th best lottery odds. If you look at the 3 teams ahead of them in the lottery odds, not in the draft, Houston, Detroit, Orlando, all 3 of them are, in my opinion, significantly worse than the Thunder right now, whether that's roster composition, culture, the way they play.
Sometimes all the above.
Yeah, I think best case scenario, the Thunder end up 4th best lottery odds, and so maybe it's not just right. Maybe that's too. I don't know if that'd be too high or too low based on the way you asked it, but I think somewhere
too high in terms of lottery odds,
right?
Too low in terms. Yeah,
I think 4 or 5 is likely where they end up.
I think just to add on to that, so you don't have to ask me the same question, Jacob. I think the only team they're really competing with here would be New Orleans. I could see, to Nick's point, where they're a spot above with New Orleans getting that fourth spot. But I also see like Indiana and Portland are 2 very stubborn teams I don't think are trying to bottom out. And so the Thunder would just have to exceed expectations despite Pressey's best efforts, for lack of a better term, for that to happen. So I think New Orleans, OKC are going to be battling for that 4th, 5th best odds at the number 1 pick.
I've been thinking about this, Taylor.
Yeah.
What if Portland, they're going to be bad this year?
They might sit the rest of the season.
What if they
I was kind of thinking about that
they say,
too.
screw it, we're just going to see what pick we get, and they somehow land number 1, and they trade that for a guy that can help a Dame now. That is an incentive.
That would be a genius move. That would be
it's kind of what Golden State did in the Steph injury season.
Yeah, it's 100% what they did. It would be the best move that the Denver.
They actually drafted the guy though. They drafted Wiseman. They drafted, they drafted.
And they still got Kuminga.
Yeah, but I'm saying Portland didn't actually use the pick.
Yeah, I know, and they trade that. What doesn't matter who that player is to get. Yeah, I think that would be arguably the best move that the Blazers have done in the past 5 seasons.
Yeah,
is that fair? I'm with you. I think that's
the Blazers haven't done shit in the past 5 seasons, so
I don't trust them to do it. To Jacob's point, I don't trust them to do it.
To try to turn their season around right now.
I couldn't agree more.
I think the best plan for them is to bottom out.
I could not.
So
whether that's trading Dame and bottoming out, or
I don't think that's the case, but I could see Nurk or CJ pretty easy. So which team above the Thunder is the biggest threat besides the Pelicans to compete with them for that number 4 spot? Is it Portland or is it Indiana?
Portland. Indiana's owner already said we're not doing that.
That's a good point.
Like they're actually they're trying to win, they just suck. Like they're literally trying to win every single night.
Yeah. I'm just
that's
curious.
That's the difference between the Thunder and these other teams. Like New Orleans wants to win. Portland wants to win. Indiana wants to win. San Antonio wants to win. Sacramento wants to win. Atlanta wants to win.
But yeah, after that, and then it's like a hard cutoff, like with 4 to 5 teams that actually understand what's going on and don't want to be stuck in NBA mediocrity.
And Nick, you mentioned it earlier, that you were talking about Houston and Detroit and Orlando. Is it crazy of me to think that Detroit has overall better talent than Oklahoma City?
Dude, with Bol, I'm not saying Bol's like the next savior, but
he'll put up points.
They have talent in Detroit though.
Yeah, like
But they
fun
suck.
talent, fun talent.
And I think that just goes back to culture and competency in Oklahoma City.
Hey,
Nearly makes it impossible to tank.
where'd that Detroit guy come from?
What do you
that's
mean?
true. The GM.
Troy Weaver.
I got you.
But still,
So-
to Jacob's point, they're putting together a kind of a pretty intriguing, maybe not fun, but intriguing prospect and or product, and they're still losing games.
Same with the Magic. I think they got a lot of talent. Like it's a lot
Also
of fun
true.
talent.
Yeah.
I love.
Yeah, they have a lot of talent. And you got they're doing this without Jonathan Isaac.
Yeah,
Cole Anthony's
Markel.
still showing up.
Yeah, without
Markel.
Markel.
And they could have a
Mamba to
Paolo. Or,
OKC.
they could have a Paolo or a Jabari on their team next year.
That's a really good point. Good for them, right?
God.
Like, talk
Hey,
about
the good
franchises
news-
doing it right.
The good news is, are they likely, if they land above Oklahoma City, to take a Jabari Smith Jr. when they have a Chuma Okeke, they have a Franz Wagner, they have a Jonathan Isaac? Is there a chance they could say, we're loaded at that big
Small
wing
forward,
front
power
court
forward,
position?
yeah.
OKC will trade a pick back and we'll take Jaden Ivey, and you can have
Well, the same thing applies. They got Suggs. They got Full.
I was thinking
Anthony.
that too. They don't want a guard.
They are legitimately loaded
Cole Anthony
everywhere
is
in
That's
terms
true.
of young
now.
talent.
That's true.
Good. No,
point.
I see
way
what you're
way to
saying.
rain on my parade, buddy.
I see what you're
Thanks.
saying. I see what you're saying. But the
But
Thunder,
yeah,
I think too.
Point is well taken.
It's the same. It's the same situation with the Thunder. If the Thunder fall to 4 and they take Ivy, I think it just makes Lou Dort expendable. Same thing
That's
with the Magic. If they were to take Jabari or Paolo, I think it makes Jonathan Isaac expendable, or whoever it might be. That's not a bad problem
keep
to
the
have. You
younger
get
guy.
you get more assets
For sure. So I have a question about the tank for you guys. We talked about it a little bit this week off pod. I don't know how long this conversation will go. We have some Twitter questions we want to get to, some Reddit questions we want to get to, some around the association stuff. But I really want to discuss this question. Hypothetical. What happens if the lottery doesn't treat OKC well again this summer? Right? We've got to expect that the 2022-2023 season, this team will be better. Shea with another year experience, Lou with another year experience, a 20-year-old Josh Giddey with experience in an offseason. Same thing with a Trey Mann, a Jeremiah Robinson Earl. We would have to assume that next season this team will be better than they are this season. Is a tank in 2022-2023 to get a top 3, like bottom 3 record top 3 odds? Is that possible? And will Presti adjust the plan? I think all 3 of us on this show, we know that Sam Presti is committed to building through the draft. That's been made very, very clear. Will he deviate from the plan should the lottery not go their way this summer, and knowing that they probably won't be able to tank and bottom out in like the bottom 3 the following year? Will he adjust the plan and start trading picks to get in talent and current players around this team? Or do you think they're so committed to this style of building that they would be more likely to shop at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, trade him, and go all in around Josh Giddey?
So to your point, or sorry, to what you presented, Jacob, and I kind of see Nick's face. I love the way that you present it to us, just like point blank, no fluff around it.
Yeah, it's hard to take our fandom out of it as well.
Right, exactly.
And we're all committed to seeing Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being a great player in Oklahoma City.
So
But
I
I'm
liked how you
interested in
presented it to us in the
how
Slack.
much do we think Sam Presti is committed to the building?
Does
through the
Presti
draft
commit
plan?
to the tank, or does he trade off Shea and Lou and keep like a Giddey, for example, and and see who you get in this upcoming, like Jabari Smith Jr. or whoever it may be? No, that's a bad example, because if they did that, we wouldn't be in this situation. But to your point, Jacob, it's really weird that you asked that question in our Slack, because like a day or 2 prior, I was driving home on my way from work and was listening to a podcast. And I sadly can't even remember what it was. I can't remember if it was a Thunder-related podcast or it was J. Kyle Mann on the Ringer talking about Jabari Smith Jr. But I had the same thought. And I the conclusion I came to was that in that situation, especially what we've seen from Shea and some of the things that we mentioned, just even from tonight's game, for example, I think Presti would be more likely to trade Shea than to push the chips in and try and get like Ben Simmons types players around him. Now, that's not to say that he will just do that if the Thunder land out of the top 5 this draft. I see you shaking your head. He's not going to just trade Shea because the Thunder don't get a top 5 pick this season. My point is, it's going to be very hard this upcoming season if you get like a 7th or 8th draft pick in this upcoming draft and kind of have a similar team that you fielded this season to tank again, especially when you have a guy like Shea that I think is ready to compete. Some of these guys are ready to compete again. If the opportunity were to present itself, especially in that 2023 draft, we have Victor Wembanyama, Amani Bates, that's maybe a bad example. Scoot Henderson. I think Presti may be willing to trade Shea in that situation. But there's a lot of outside variables that would have to happen. I don't know. In a vacuum, I still think Presti might trade Shea.
Nick?
This team's going to be horrible next year, too.
Will they be as bad as this year's team?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I really don't.
Yeah. This is not, I mean...
They won't be contending. They won't even be a playoff contender, but like, I think we're looking at a play-in team just based off of culture and player development. Unless you...
But at the same time, so the question was if you don't get a top 5 pick, right? So you're assuming that Orlando gets a Jabari or a Paolo, and Detroit gets one of those 2, and then Houston gets another. Like, so the teams behind you in the standings, which are actually better than you because they're getting a better pick, are getting solid players, which in turn would mean their player development and their roster turnover should be better. So you should naturally fall. I
disagree.
I don't,
because you have young players with those teams, right? Sorry, continue. But I disagree with that.
That also goes back to the culture point we brought up a little bit ago as well. But yeah,
I just don't. Barring a massive trade, I do not see the Thunder being a good team at all next year.
Interesting.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I just think they're pushing. Like, if you take this team and then the only thing you do in a vacuum again is add a 6th through 10th pick. I think they're better than they are this season, and we're looking at like a.
No, I agree. They're better than they are this season, but every team around you also got a draft pick.
Yeah,
and I don't know if that raises those teams' ceilings, though. Is my point.
So you're saying culture is great, but you're saying OKC adds Kendall Brown from Baylor and Orlando, or Houston adds Jabari Smith Jr. or Paolo. Culture at that point, sorry, talent reigns.
Yeah, but like, look at those players playing on their college team, right? It's like, I don't know. I look at a team like the Houston Rockets and I think of like, I don't know. I don't know if adding a player in that system where he's trying to show out and do his own thing really translates, going through rookie mistakes really translates to winning more games than a team like OKC is right now. And I think that's the reason that the Thunder are unable to tank like a team like the Pistons or the Houston Rockets. And I don't think adding another young player of high talent and high ceiling to those teams affects their win record that much this coming season, as much as it will long term down the line if they can build a correct culture around those guys. I don't know.
I just don't see a world. I don't see a world where the Thunder are good next year. I just don't see it.
And so you also don't see a world where they trade Shea to reset the timeline and make sure they bought him out.
That's where I'm going at with him.
So you as many bites at the apple, because we've used that analogy before. As many bites as the apples Oklahoma City has, you also want to hold on to what you know is good, right?
That's fair.
We've seen many number 1 pick busts. We've seen many number 2 pick busts. We've seen in the past decade in the top 5, only 2 or 3 ever become all-stars. There's always 2 busts in the top 5 relative to where they were picked. As much as we heard the rumors last year that Presti was potentially looking at Shea for number 1 to take Cade, like, I don't know if you trade a guy you know is good.
So let me clarify and say that I agree with what you're saying, Nick. I'm trying to think as Presti thinks, and I almost wonder if he wants not only more bites of the apple, but more bites of all the apples, so you can find the best apple and get the best or the most bites of the best apple. Is that ridiculous of me to say? Or again, I agree with what you're saying. I want to keep Shea, but
Also, let's just make it clear. Last season, the talk SGA traded for the number one pick. Like, we don't think there's anything to that. But if they weren't willing to trade SGA for Cade, there is no way in God's earth that they are trading Shea for a pick in 2022.
Agreed.
None of those players are anywhere close to the top 3, top 4, top 5 of last season.
No.
Last point I want to make before we move on. I know we talk a lot about the Thunder should go get Mo Bamba, or the Thunder should go get Cam Reddish, or the Thunder should go get this guy or that guy. And I love those conversations. I love for those players to be on this team because it would make watching them more fun. But this whole conversation convinces me even more that they are not apt to do that. Because let's say within the next 31 days, they do go and make a trade for Cam Reddish. Cam doesn't make this team worse, right? But he doesn't pull them all the way to the top. And then next season, Nick, you start to get pulled closer to that 7, 8, 9 spot in the tank. And then you're really in a spot where it's a lose-lose situation. And I don't know, I just think Presti is the kind of guy to really want to maximize his odds as much as possible. And hey, one good thing about the lottery now, does it suck that that the lottery reform happened and the odds got flattened? Yes, but if the Thunder end at number 4, I'd rather have those flattened odds.
Yeah, I was going to say you may based on where we're at now, you may like the reformed odds.
Exactly. If you're number 1, you hate the reformed odds. If you're number 4 and 5, you like them.
If the Thunder's draft odds last season didn't go sour like they did, we would have a very different perspective.
Yeah. Can you imagine talking about one of Scotty Barnes or Evan Mobley?
If you got 1 and 5, there was a great chance of happening. The whole
can we not go down this path? Because it's gonna make me sad.
The whole mindset changes.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people saw what happened last season and think, oh, the lottery, no, we're not about that. The lottery's bad. It can, but it was 1 year,
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. You could be the Pelicans.
Odds are odds for a reason, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. We sent out the bat signal for some questions on social media. I have them all here in the doc. We'll just grab a handful of them because I do want to do some around the association. So first one from @ThunderGuy69 on Twitter says, is it realistic to consider the Clippers pick in the lottery? I feel like at worst they will be in the play-in, and at that point they will have Kawhi back. So Nick, is it realistic to think that Clippers pick could be in the lottery?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think the play-in makes it very interesting because there's always that extra layer to it now. It's not as black and white as, you finish 9th in the West and you're in the lottery. There's this whole chance to play in, even if you're the team, there could be a team that goes 37 and 45, my math is right, and you go and you're well below 500 and you're the 10 seed and you still make the play-in, and then you're not a lottery team anymore.
Yeah.
That makes it much more complex. So for that reason, for good or for bad, the Clippers could certainly be a lottery team because they could also end up having a surge at the end of the year and end up with the 7 seed and then still be a lottery team, which is crazy. Yeah. So all that to say, one way or another, yeah, it's very fair to actually consider them a lottery team. They haven't been great this year with Paul George. He's out. Kawhi's still out for the foreseeable future. If they didn't have the Clippers on their chest, this roster is not great.
Yeah. Let me get you guys on record today, January 9th. Let's say that Clippers pick the over-under for the selection that the Thunder get. Let's put it at 16.5. Over means it's going to be 17th or a
Under.
Worse pick.
Under.
Oh.
Under. I think so too.
If I were to tell you back in July that Clippers pick would be 16th or a better selection,
I would have told you that not only Kawhi, but PG was hurt as well.
And you would have taken it in a heartbeat, wouldn't you?
I probably would have taken it preseason too, honestly.
Yeah. I think I would have taken that pretty quickly.
Reggie Jackson, role player.
Right.
Marcus Morris, role player on the Celtics that became a role player on the Clippers.
The corpse of Serge.
Paul George is their only star.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's literally Paul
Which
George
makes
and a
me
bunch
mad
of good
because
role
Amir
players.
Coffey went for
Terrence
like
Mann,
25 today to beat the Hawks.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on, Atlanta, get your crap together.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Whew. But yes,
Gallo has fallen off of a cliff.
Hey, I mentioned this on Twitter the other day. If there's any sort of legs to that Ben Simmons Atlanta Hawks stuff, I'm all game for the Thunder being the third team, take on that Gallinari contract, just buy him out.
Yeah.
Collect your pick, collect your dues, and move on down the road, baby. You got to do something with that cap space.
Well, they got that open roster spot so they can take on someone and do that pretty easily.
Exactly. Let's go to another Twitter question. This one I like a lot. From @PokeCooJam. He says, should we be more realistic about our current rookies? Last season, Poku and Teo both had 5 20-point scoring games, including a Thunder record for Teo. We were a little excited then, but now not so much. Do we maybe have too much hype for guys like Aaron, Trey, and JRE? What do you think, Taylor?
I think that's a very fair point. Because I was thinking back to when Teo was playing all those minutes down the stretch of the season when SGA was out, and he was putting up some very good stats. And then they call it a sophomore slump for a reason. But with that being said, the two players that we've talked about Aaron, we've talked about Trey. There's just things that they contribute that guys like Teo, guys like Poku didn't quite have. And I still think it's early to write off Poku. But they contribute a little more already than guys like, especially Teo contributed last season at this point. So because of that, and the fact that they're able to do it against different levels of competition, even as they, more consistently, even as they're continuing to show up on scouting reports, I think that's really important as well. So I think a lot of the things that we talk about, like Wiggins' two-way versatility, right? Like him being able to shoot from outside, put the ball on the floor, finish around the rim some due to strength and size, and still be able to defend players on the other end of the floor. When it comes to Trey, obviously still trying to continue to improve on the defensive end, but the space creation, the shot creation is pretty elite already, combined with him showing some flashes of playmaking and being able to drive to the rim some, and even some catch and shoot stuff. There's a little more. It's all about versatility. And that's what those guys present, I think, compared to a player like a Teo. And Poku presents all the versatility, but just can't quite put it together. I think that's why I'm more optimistic on guys like Aaron and Trey compared to really Teo, but even then Poku, who still can't really hone it in, if that makes sense.
Teo started like 50 games last year, though.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a very valid question. I've thought about a lot.
Mm-hmm. Sample size plays a pretty big role. Also, to get us completely and utterly off topic, we're recording this at between like 9 and 10 p.m. on Sunday, January 9th. And I keep flipping back and forth between our stream and Twitter. John Morant is ungoddamn believable.
Yeah.
He's insane, dude. He is absolutely insane.
Wild.
Nick, let me ask you this. The Thunder have 4 rookies on this roster right now. Josh Giddey, Trey Mann, Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, Aaron Wiggins. Let's say one of them has to be gone next season just for numbers purposes. Which one is most likely to be gone?
Oh, that's really hard. JRE?
Interesting. I think I'd probably go Trey Mann. I love Trey Mann, but I think if they were to get rid of one of the rookies, it would be in like a trade to move up in the draft.
And Trey gets you further along.
I think Trey moves you up
Okay,
the ladder a little bit more.
That's a very different question. You didn't say who has the most trade value. You said who's most likely to be gone.
Fair.
I picked
JRE
because of the low ceiling.
Yeah.
That's fair too.
That's fair.
That's fair too. That really puts a dent in my he's your bench big for the next 10 years.
With your theory, Giddey's most likely gone because if you want to move up, that's the guy you got.
That's right.
I think they've hitched their wagon pretty strongly to the Australian sensation. Let's do a couple more here from @SmellyFartBox88. Big fan of ours. We love Smelly Fartbox 88. What do y'all think about Jaden Ivey?
I love what you guys said about like the Ja Morant comparison, but just that's not the. I don't think
He's
that's
like a great
taking him.
value jaw.
Yeah, and just doesn't fit with the current roster that Thunder have already constructed and some of the pieces that seem solid overall for the future, right? Like, again, all of that's still not necessarily in stone, but it'd be surprising for if the Thunder were to take Ivy.
Here's a fun question for Nick, knowing how he feels about this draft. Let's say the lottery lands with OKC at 3.
Mm-hmm.
You want OKC to take Jaden Ivey or Chet Holmgren?
Chet.
Yeah.
Oh, I like it. Hey, I got a hot take. Are you ready?
Yeah.
It's pretty spicy.
Oh God.
Do I have the hot take sounder on here? Oh, I do. All right. Nick took his headphones off because he doesn't even want to listen to my BS. Chet Holmgren has the possibility. Okay, I'm not saying it's for sure. I'm not even saying it's probable.
Boo, it's getting colder and colder.
At his ceiling, Chet Holmgren is Rudy Gobert with a handle and a jump shot.
Okay.
Mm.
The rim protection, the kind of slender big man frame.
Rim protection is something
He's
that
not going to have that strength.
harder to replicate as you go up in the ranks.
That's fair.
Him blocking these, 6'1" power forwards in the crappy league Gonzaga plays in is a little different.
He'd be having, and you think about his timing, it reminds me of what Poku does for OKC, right? Like I worry about the
standing
strength.
firm. His peak is
Chet
jump
scares
shooting,
me.
ball handling Rudy Gobert.
I like it. Scares me, but I like it.
I think Jaden Ivey's awesome. I really do. Like, I think he's awesome. I think we're gonna look back at this draft and say, man, Jaden Ivey's probably one of the 3 best players in this draft because the likelihood of Jabari, Paolo, and Chet all panning out is slim, right? We're probably gonna look back and say, man, Jaden should have been top 3. But a lot of teams have their guards set, man. That's why this is a heavy forward. Last season,
True.
very guard heavy.
Yep.
This season, very forward heavy. It's a lot of the same teams drafting.
Good point.
Let's get a couple more here. I'm trying to see some good ones. Let's go to Reddit from, I don't know how to say it, Cunnilingasaur, something like that. Is the Thunder the sexiest team in the NBA?
No.
I thought you were looking for a good question.
That is a good question. We got Josh Giddey, the best looking man in the NBA.
Okay.
From King number 2705 on Reddit. How about this one? Is playing Giddey off ball now officially just a tanking strategy? Not to say that tanking is bad, but the difference in his on and off ball play, as well as the performance of the team in each scenario, is too big to ignore at this point.
We've been seeing, and this is something I noticed again tonight. And I don't have stats to back this up. I don't, just because I feel like we've been seeing more and more Giddey on ball, even with Shea in the lineup. Not to say that he's surpassing Shea by any means in terms of having the ball in his hands, but I think we're seeing more situations that Dino is putting him in on purpose, where he is the lead ball handler. So that would be my answer to that. I think we're going to continue to see that
Shea
progress.
to play off ball.
But that's the issue, right?
Mm-hmm. They got to learn to do it together.
Exactly.
Maybe.
Nick, you have any thoughts on this?
Maybe Jaden Ivey is the best thing for this team then, huh?
Ooh. Fair point.
Because I'm just kidding. No,
Trade Lou.
No, I think Jaden Ivey on this team is a much better fit than Lou Dort.
Yeah.
But no, I think that Giddey off ball, not a tanking strategy. That's just trying to get him exploring new things. I think both him and Shea, like you guys said, need to get better off ball. I think the way he's knocked down threes is a good thing for his off ball play. Because if you can't shoot off ball, what are you doing off ball, right? If you got to have the ball in your hands to do good things, that's a bad thing. So I think it's more of just exploratory for Giddey. Is the answer to my question.
Last Twitter question we'll take tonight. I just had it. Where did it go? Uh-oh. It's gone. That sucks. Well, whenever I find it back on the list. Oh, here it is. At @Phi_Elson. Kenrich fits perfectly with the Celtics. What would be the trade you'd ask for to make it work?
I mean, Kenrich fits perfect on a lot of different teams. But
yes,
Nick,
I think Kenrich fits on 29
you
other
look like
teams
you
in the
have one
NBA.
already for the Celtics specifically.
No, I think we
Dude.
just talked about the only guy that even makes sense / interests anybody is Naismith.
Is exactly.
That's the trade.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't want Romeo Langford.
See, I
They're
think just
not,
like
they can't
Sorry.
even trade Robert Williams III. They're not going to. He's too good.
agreed.
So, yeah, Naismith it is.
And it fits well with the Thunder. I think the biggest thing with Kenrich to me that's so fascinating is you could attach a pick to him and get a pretty good player like we talked about, like a Reddish or a Nick Claxton, but that just does not make sense for what the Thunder are trying to do this season. Yeah.
Very good. All
I
right.
don't want to hear Nick Claxton again, Taylor.
What'd you say?
Nick is anti-Nick.
Nick Claxton
Noted.
is not a guy worth trading for. He's just not.
He'd be a better Baisley.
Thunder liked him a lot in the draft.
Yeah, but he's shown that his peak is a backup center. And according to Jacob, we have that.
That is true. That is true. Darius Baisley. Let's go around the association real quick, guys. Oh, that's the oldest around the association sounder.
Old school. I like it.
Oh my
Do it.
goodness. No, let's go.
Roll
to
down.
I don't even know where you're sitting at.
Hey, Aaron Naismith is shooting 23% from 3 this season. That definitely fits the Presti mold. I think that's going to happen. The NBA trade deadline is 31 days away, 1 month, gentlemen. What are some NBA teams that you want to see or you think should make some sort of trade, make a shakeup before the deadline? I'll kick us off here. I mentioned them earlier in the show. The Atlanta Hawks got to do something.
Yes.
Because they're bad right now.
I mean, they also have so many players that like fit a similar role.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I agree.
I've got one.
They need to make a move. I don't know what it is. The Ben Simmons one is interesting. There's a whole lot of other types of things they could do.
Nick's got one teed up.
But they got to do one. Nick, what do you got?
Talking to a buddy that is the Timberwolves guy, and we're in agreement on this one. So I know it's not crazy.
Okay.
Cam Reddish would fit great in Minnesota, right?
True.
It seems like they've got every position. They got Ant and D'Lo in the backcourt. They got Cat in the front court. They kind of need like a wing.
They have solid power forwards. Yeah,
I think Cam Reddish could be the wing, and as such, someone like Malik Beasley could be intriguing to Atlanta. I know he's on a larger contract, so I don't know if you like send back the Gallinari deal, who actually could be kind of fun on that team, or
True.
I don't know how you make it work logistically, but like more broadly, a package that includes Malik Beasley going to Atlanta, some extra scoring alongside Trey off the bench, whatever, and Reddish going to Minnesota, because it seems like Malik Beasley he's really good and he's a great scorer, but there's so many damn guards on the Minnesota squad right now that just doesn't make a lot of sense.
I think that's fair. I wonder if Atlanta would be more interested instead of Beasley in getting like a defensive minded guy like a Josh Okogie.
Maybe.
That's interesting. That's a good point.
Because one of Atlanta's biggest problems is defense right now. Yeah.
I sort of love Josh.
Yep.
Taylor, you got a team?
I do. I actually have a lot. I'm trying to decide which one we should mention.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and talk about the Celtics. I mean, that's another team I think that fits a very, or in a very similar situation as the Hawks. They need to do something, and there's a lot of talk that should they do something drastic, which, if we're being completely honest, I want to go ahead and call this out. I think a lot of that is large media and even other teams who would profit from the Celtics, trading a player like a Jaylen Brown for publicity. For
Taylor jumping on
their
the
team.
conspiracy theory.
Yeah, that's
hole
right.
here. I like
I
it.
think it. Yes, I think
Jet
other
fuel can't melt
teams-
steel beams.
Yes. I don't think the Celtics are going to do something like that to that point, but they do need to do something.
Yeah, Jason and Jalen aren't going anywhere. I
They
feel
need
pretty firmly
some
planting my
sport.
flag there.
And they need some sort of playmaker. Dennis Schroeder is not that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, can they find a playmaker? Is there a solid one out on the market? Like Ricky Rubio would have been awesome, but that's not going to happen now. So I'm curious what you guys think. I think the Celtics need to make some sort of move to help out.
They need a
Jalen
starting
and-
level
and
point guard,
Jason.
I think.
Yeah.
Where do you
Someone
get
to
that,
set the
though?
table.
That's so hard, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. That's so tough.
It's a great question.
It's almost like maybe you should have kept Kimba.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, who is in and out of the lineup in the Knicks for weird reasons.
But balling out when he plays?
yeah.
You
40
know?
something points.
Yeah.
Well, double on Christmas, right?
Yeah. Like 40 or 50 the couple nights before.
Yeah, I don't know where they get a starting level point guard and what they have to offer to get a starting level point guard, but that one makes some sense to me, for
It
sure.
sucks with new front office regime too.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Brad has his hands full.
Yeah. A lot of those guys, he was like part of their development. Like it's harder to trade them. He's connected to them. Like being a coach for those guys, like you're like a father, for some of those
Yeah.
young guys. It's hard to trade those
It's
guys.
different as and that's a good point. It's even more different. Not even just being a GM versus a coach, but being a coach that goes into a
Yeah.
GM who
Yeah.
with the same guys. That's a
Yeah.
really good point, Nick.
Yeah.
Jacob, who do you got? What do you think? You have a
I
team?
already went with Atlanta.
Oh, sorry, Nick. Who do you got?
Nick had the Minnesota one. There's
Yeah.
teams all across the board that
Except
need to make
the
trades. The
Sixers is an obvious
Trailblazers need to
one,
make a
right?
trade.
The Raptors are an interesting team that like they just have so many pieces that they could trade to like make them I shouldn't say really good, make them a contender again, or could trade away players to make them more of a rebuilding team. I think about them a lot. I continue to think about the Bulls, who are such a great regular season team right now, are playing so well together, but I still don't trust them come playoff time. Is there a move that they can make? Like a Kenrich Williams, for example, that could, a minor move that's not going to affect them negatively, at least come regular season in terms of chemistry, but could really bolster their chances come playoffs.
I have two fun ones for the Bulls. They've been
Okay.
talked about at nauseum.
And we haven't talked
Jeremy
about Western
Grant
Conference
to the Bulls is a fun one.
Oh,
And then I heard Stacey King mention this one, Bulls color commentator.
yep.
Harry Barnes?
Harry Barnes is one that could fit. What about Miles Turner? You already know he can play in the front court with somebody else. He and Vooch in the front court to add some size, and you can
Yeah.
go small and stagger them and play one of them at the 5 at all points in time in the game.
It's a lot of cash money for some centers, man.
Yeah, and what's
Yeah.
that? Right. And what's that's going to cost them? I don't know.
Losing Patrick Williams was like a pretty big
That
issue for them.
sucks. That really sucks. I agree completely.
I think Jeremy Grant would fit great there.
I
Why
love
not?
it.
I'd
Jeremy one's
rather see
interesting.
them go at Sabonis at that point. If you're going to throw Patrick
interesting.
Williams in there.
Yeah. Now, like I'm looking at the West, and the team that sticks out to me from the very beginning at the top, the Utah Jazz, right? Like very good regular season team. They continue to be good regular season wise, but like they're dropping some games that they shouldn't be. I'm so very concerned about them come postseason.
There's a lot of talk that they might trade Joe Ingles.
and Bogdanovich on the trade table. Yeah, either one
That'd
of
be
those.
interesting.
Either
And then
one of
obviously the
those.
Lakers.
Oh yeah, and the Mavericks, right? Like find some help around side Luca.
I hope we have an exciting trade deadline. That's all I know. I just want to have some
It'll
fun.
happen. It'll happen.
I want some Woj bombs. All right, gentlemen. Good show. We talked for forever about basketball. Not complaining. I love basketball. Any thoughts? Any last minute things you got to get off your chest before we get out of here?
Hot takes, everybody, right now around the horn. Player that gets traded by the Thunder that you don't expect. Lou Dort, I'm first.
Oh, that you
Who's
don't
next?
expect. Oh man, that's hard. But I don't expect. Okay, well, let's say Favors because I think we're going to buy him out. I don't expect him to be traded. He
I'll take
sucks.
that.
That's
I'll take
fair.
that.
Sorry,
Teo
Favors.
Maledon.
Love you. Teo, yeah, there you go.
I don't
For
expect him
what?
to get traded because I don't think anybody wants him.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Fair.
So awesome. Well,
Also, busy week ahead for OKC.
Yes.
Another thing I'm going to add.
and we will be with you that entire week starting Tuesday when the Thunder go to Washington, D.C. to take on the Wizards. I don't know which one of us has that post game. Somebody does. We'll be live after that game, so make sure to join the live stream or download the podcast after the game. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your shows from. Shout out to JD Silva for making us a new intro. Hope you guys like it. We will be back with you again soon. Until then, please stay safe, stay healthy. Stuff's getting kind of crazy again here in the United States. We will talk to you soon. Until then, and as always, Thunder up.